Have you ever wondered why you can have a boatload of cash, just like all the money you want, and still feel like crap?
Welcome to the show. Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Welcome to Your Ultimate Life. The podcast now going on year 7, created to help you think about what it takes to have purpose, real prosperity, and joy. I used to think, this is going to be, confession time here, I suppose. I used to think that if I had more money, everything would be fine. I really believed that. If I just had more money, if I could just make another $10,000 a year, if I could just make another $100,000 a year, if I could just get up to the executive thing and get in the 400s, if I could just get that with a bonus and get in the 600s. And you know what? I did. All of that. Not all at once, obviously, but over time, in that spanned years. And I used to think every time, that's great, I have it. And then, but if I just need, a little more, 10%, 20%, 50% more. And you know what? It's never enough. Never. And there's a reason. Today, I'm talking about this. Prosperity, even boatloads of cash without what I'm calling sovereignty. Prosperity without sovereignty is a trap. And you know what? Like any trap, when you're in a trap, does that feel good? Right? I was just watching a television program, and I don't remember if it was a series or a movie or something some time ago, and it was in Australia, and it was not in the outback, right? A lot of the things take place in the giant desert that is the Australian outback. But this was in New South Wales. And there are some beautiful mountains and rivers and canyons and, beautiful stuff there. Anyway, it was there. And this crazy guy was chasing some lady and, his typical backwoods nutcase doing bad things, serial killer kind of madman. But anyway, she was running and she was doing good against him, getting away. And then he caught her, and then they were in a fight or whatever. And suddenly a trap sprung on her leg, right? And so she had one foot in a trap. Now, I don't know enough about that to know if it was a bear trap or whatever, but you know what I mean. Whack, slaps closed on your leg, and, it may have had some teeth. I don't really remember. But I remember all of a sudden the dynamic shifted completely because suddenly she had a trap on her leg. And so that limited movement and et cetera, and everything changed. So you know what it's like to be in a trap. Sometimes a trap is obvious like that, a great big grody thing hanging on your leg. Sometimes traps are subtle or you can't see them and your heart is trapped. Sometimes you're trapped in a situation you don't want to be in and you just feel trapped and you don't know what to do and you don't feel like you have either the courage or the wisdom or anything to make a move and get out of that trap. So I use that word on purpose. Prosperity without sovereignty is a trap. And that means it feels that heavy, that uncertain, and that fuzzy. And so I want you to think about prosperity and sovereignty. Now, what is sovereignty? Sovereignty is both the recognition and the acceptance or use of an eternal truth, which is you design your life. You make your bed and you get to sleep in it. That's that simple. Another way to say it a little bit fancier is you live a life you design. You live a life you create. And of course, the normal pushback on that is I didn't ask for bad weather. I didn't ask for a rotten partner. I didn't ask for a betrayal from a business partner. I didn't ask for the IRS in the U.S. or CRA in Canada to come after me and take my money. I didn't ask for this illness. So screw you and your you build your life thing. And that's very understandable. And it's just a misunderstanding of what we mean, what it actually means to create your life. The sun shines on everybody. We're standing next to me. If we're standing next to each other, I mean, sun shines on both of us. I got red hair. Actually, I got almost no hair, right? It's leaving quickly, but I used to have really, really red hair, right? And with that comes freckles, and I got some freckles. I didn't get buried in them like some people, but I have some. And it also comes with fair skin, which means you burn easily. So let's say you have a little bit darker pigment in the skin, and or you don't, whatever, I don't remember the name of that chemical that lets you brown more easily that I don't have any of. But we're standing there and the sun shines on both of us. And you get a tan and I get burned. And so for the next days, I blister and I'm miserable. And we stood in the same sun. Well, that is one sort of obvious example of how exactly the same circumstance affects people differently. Now, that's caused by an externality in the pigment in the skin and the fact that we stood in the sun. The way that that works with everything else is internal chemistry. So that's external chemistry. Internal chemistry looks like this. You and I are standing next to each other, and some event happens, and we both see it at the same time. You interpret it one way, and I interpret it another way. So you decide that it's a good thing. I decide that it's a terrible thing. So I'm having anger, frustration, resentment, maybe fear, and you are excited. The difference wasn't the event. The difference was what you decided that the event meant. Okay, now let's go to another example. You and I are standing together, and a virus, someone walks by with a virus. We both catch it, whatever it is. You know, we're not going to label it. Influenza, rhinovirus, we get a cold, whatever. And you interpret it as an amazing thing because it gives you a reason not to go do something you didn't really want to do anyway. I interpret it as a terrible thing because it got in the way of something I wanted to do. Same situation, same virus, both got a cold. I realize immune response would be different, so, you know, there's a little breakdown there, but it is what we make out of it. And so whether it's getting sick, winning the lottery, or not winning the lottery, building a business, losing a business, a bankruptcy, a jet engine falling on your house or mine, we decide what it means. Shakespeare said that. Nothing is either good or bad until we think it's so. And that's probably a slightly mangled quote. But the bottom line is things happen. We decide whether they're good or bad. So a lot of people have built successful lives and they feel like they're in a prison. Someone else could build a successful life and it feels wonderful, glorious. They're adding good to the world. They're doing good. They get up and love every minute of life. What's the difference? Same money, same health, same situation. Interpretation. What we're doing in the world. So let's just take that as settled. Okay, that's how we create our lives. People get success. They make money, maybe they have friends, they have status, they have clients, and they still feel trapped. And the trapped feeling is a lack of identity, a lack of meaning. I hear it all the time. It is that sort of thing that gives rise to the midlife crisis, right? You mean I did all this, I worked this hard, and I'm 45 or 50 or whatever, and this is it? Like, this is as good as I'm going to feel? And that comes because we were expecting the outside things to create the validation and the satisfaction and happiness. Well, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is a choice. Joy is a choice. And so prosperity without sovereignty is a trap. And again, sovereignty is not just knowing that you are sovereign, meaning king, queen, emperor, empress, fully in charge of your life, but doing something with that, acting on that truth. So I want you to think about right now, where in your life do you feel trapped? Are you in a relationship that feels trapped? Are you in a job that feels like you're trapped? Are you in a health situation that feels like you're trapped? Are you in a spiritual situation that feels like you're trapped? Do you have an addiction that feels like you're trapped? A compulsive behavior? I'm no stranger to those. So I want you to write them down. Write down something where you feel trapped. Okay? So this trap, depending on what it is, might look like high income, no real freedom. It might look like great visibility that someone might envy and no peace. It might look like clients, but no real leverage. So you're still hustling all the time, grind, grind, grind. It might look like business success, but internal listlessness. And that's a big, long word that just means bleh, meh, right? Here's the subtle or not so subtle misery. You're not failing, you're highly functioning, and you're not free. And this is a common complaint. I lived there. I know lots of people that have done it. And it is because we buy into the myth that says, well, if I just do this and this and this, then I'll be happy. As if the external thing creates happiness. That's the trap. It does not. More money simply creates bigger problems or problems of a different kind. A lot of high performers are not thriving. They're just really well-paid prisoners. All right, so let's talk about why this keeps happening, because it isn't one and done. And there are a lot of people like me, maybe like you, that are feeling the energetic shift in the world, a move toward more openness, more love, more kindness, more forgiveness. There are also a lot of people who are rejecting that and feeling the opposite, more anger, more division, more frustration. There's a common characteristic between the two groups. They're often yelling at the other, saying all the suckiness is your fault. We don't control the behavior of others any more than we control the weather or the sunrise time. The only thing we can control is what we think, how we act, who we choose to be, and how we show up in the world. So when a person is chasing revenue, or they're chasing applause, or they're chasing opportunity, that leads to the trap. If you're chasing architecture or alignment or real ownership, meaning of your life, not your business, that can lead to freedom. If you chase the first group, you have a business that requires your constant presence, and it doesn't scale gracefully, and it doesn't multiply your life. If, on the other hand, you have architecture and you train others and you give opportunity freely, then you can create a life that is expansive. If you're your own success, either spiritually or financially, people talk about this in business all the time and relate it only to business. Like if you're the main cog in the wheel, then of course you can't take off. And if you go, your business is dead. If you try to sell it, you won't get anything because you don't go with it. If your success depends on your nonstop availability, then your success owns you. So let's redefine prosperity. Can we do that? Because I want to have a prosperity definition that recognizes that you and I are in control of it, not the other way around. The real contradiction comes when we absorb as truth the falsehood that external things create happiness. I was struck by the the publicity around the Met Gala the other night, all the snobbery, and I'm just calling it like it felt, the acrimony, the negative, the strutting, the preening, the we're better than you little people. That whole air of that. Originally, the Met thing was to raise money for the arts, which is a great thing. But the exclusion and the canceling and the better than you and the whole thing, I couldn't even watch it. I didn't. But I read a few reports about it, and the whole thing made me want to go take a shower. That, and you know what it reminded me of? I said something to my wife, my precious angel, Joy, said something to her, and I said, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the Capitol in the Hunger Games. Now, if you've seen the Hunger Games movie, you know what that is, and if you haven't, I'm going to paint you a little picture. There were 13 or 12 or 13 or something districts that were scattered around a central capital district. And all of the hard work, the mines and the factories and the farmers and the cattle growers or whatever they were all in these districts. And they had to work hard, and the conditions weren't that good. And sometimes there was hunger, and certainly there was no freedom of expression, and you couldn't complain about the Capitol. But in the Capitol, there was all kinds of parties and masks and makeup and weird clothes and, just the whole thing, this complete distinction. There's been lots of movies made about that. That was that one where there was a city up in the sky, and then the people down on the earth were suffering. Just that kind of reflection. But the Met Gala just reminded me of that. It just stunk. The whole thing did. And the people that were in the middle, I don't know personally the people, or at least I didn't recognize anybody that was at the gala. But in Hunger Games, the people that were in the Capitol, they're all strutting and pretending to be whatever. But then in their conversations among themselves, there was no happiness. There was no joy. It was a game, a painful, miserable, stinking game. And, of course, that gave stuff to the plot, et cetera, et cetera. So let's redefine prosperity. The word prosperity means to have an abundance of something. So it can clearly mean having an abundance of cash. Now, we all need cash. And everybody that's got any kind of a business that is online, I don't care what you're selling or what service you're providing, you have to make money or you can't eat. Now, I'm a business coach. I'm also a life coach, sovereignty coach, all kinds of things. Every single thing that I coach is something I have lived and walked through. I don't coach anything that I haven't bled for and walked in the fire for. And the reason is because I don't own it. Anything I would talk about in those areas, I'd be talking about something that I read or studied, but I don't know it in the context of lived experience. So I'll give you a funny example that will probably never come true. But if I were to try to coach someone about landscaping or, anything to do with plants or growing or lawns or gardens or orchids or roses or greenhouses or any of that stuff, first of all, I would be abysmal. And second of all, I'd have to study a lot. And even if I did, it would always be me talking about a thing over there, something I know how to do instead of something I am. If I coach people about how to create their sovereign being, how to own their life, how to get the garbage stories out of your head of not good enough and fear and all the rest of it. If I were to coach somebody about addictions or compulsive behavior, if I were to coach somebody about making money and starting businesses, if I was to coach someone about how to speak on stage and how to make video and how to show up powerfully in conversations, if I were to teach somebody about how to listen so intently that people melt down in your presence, I've lived and walked that talk. I can do that. Bulletproof, hardcore, straight up, no questions asked. So those are the things that I know how to do, and you have a batch of those kind of things. So prosperity, let's talk about that. Prosperity is having cash, means other things too. And the easiest way to create prosperity is to use the things that you have lived. not the things you have learned. Now, you can take things you learn and then live them. So, for example, there's a doctor, okay, who I know, it's a client, and she's a doctor, and she's a very good doctor, and her own passion in living is about caring and healing. And so, because the passion that she has of caring about people so deeply and healing is aligned with the skills that she has, she's a zillion times better doctor than others who have just learned the stuff and talk about it. So she has prosperity of cash and she has prosperity of soul because she's doing something that makes her happy and lights her meaning up inside. That's what it means to be aligned. So prosperity isn't just top-line revenue. It's not looking rich or having the latest trends. That's not prosperity. That's being ostentatious. Prosperity is not being busy. These days, we sort of treat busy as a badge of honor, don't we? Everybody says, I'm so busy, I can't do anything. What if we realized that was a complete backwards? That was a total waste of resources, a waste of your heart, a waste of your love, a waste of your power to be busy. What if real power comes from not being lazy by any stretch, but having empty space where you could be inspired, where you could receive inspiration from nature, from Gaia, from the divine, from the conscious unified field, from God, from that thing that we all know is greater and bigger than us, the universal consciousness. And, this isn't about names. It's there. What if prosperity is having ample time for that? What if prosperity is having space, creating intentional space for creativity? So you can create according to your gifts. Now, one of mine is music. So I create intentional time in the studio to write music, and I have a whole bunch of songs released professionally, and I've been doing concerts one a month for a few months, and I'm going to do one for every month for the rest of the year. All of those things are part of my creative expression. What is yours? Do you have prosperity of spirit? Do you have prosperity of love? Love isn't something you receive from others. Love is available everywhere. I drink love. I literally drink love from 5 fountains. What does that mean? My Creator, you can have all the love you can stand in your life if you learn to collect it from that source. For myself, from the work that I do, from the people that I love and serve. I happen to have an amazing angel for a companion. Some people have those, some people don't. There's areas in my life that are still a struggle. I've got kids that are still estranged, who don't want to talk to me. Some of them, have really negative experience. Well, they were with me in times of addiction and times of real struggle. So it's not hard to understand why that is so. But that creates a future possibility. It used to create terrible emptiness and loneliness. It doesn't anymore because I won't allow those feelings to dominate or run my life. But what I know is there will be an opportunity. And that knowledge gives me prosperity again. And it gives me hope and love. All right. So I want you to think of prosperity across a broad spectrum, because having boatloads of cash is not the answer. Now, with all of that, I am also on a mission. My mission is to reach 300 million people. What? Yeah, 300 million people. Not with just my message, but with yours. So here's an invitation. If you have a message you want to share, yourultimatelifepodcast.com. Go there, use the contact form, and tell me you want to be a guest on the show. I want to spread your message. I want to help you reach the people you want. I want to help you add good to the world. So there's an invitation, straight out. Yourultimatelifepodcast.com, use the contact form, put podcast in the subject line, and let's talk. So reaching 300 million people with what? Well, here's the message. It has 5 parts. I want you to understand and to know and to own these truths that your worth, I use the acronym WIPOS, WIPOS, right? Worth is infinite because there is no value or price that you can put on a human soul. Your identity is as a divine created being. So WIP, your possibility is limitless. And most people don't believe that. And because they don't believe it, they're not doing anything with it. And those that do believe it, especially, I see a horde of people talking about, you can create anything you want, saying all those beautiful words, but they're not living that way. If I go with them and I listen to their language and I talk to them, they're struggling, right? In one or more areas of life. Well, I can't create enough money. I know I should be able to. Oh, no. And then there's this whole circular dance of blame, shame, guilt, and still speaking the words. Well, those are hollow. And that's another example of why prosperity without the sovereignty, which is the power and control to create it, is a trap. All right. So here is another piece of that goal. I have 300 million people that I am reaching through my podcast, through my LA Talk radio show, through my music, through my books, through my coaching, the affiliate relationships and things that I have, all these methods. I'm going to reach 300 million people. WIPO is ownership, S is sovereignty. Worth, identity, possibility, ownership, sovereignty. But it isn't enough just to reach you with that message. I want you to do something with it. Because sovereignty, remember, is the act of not just knowing, but of doing something with it. So I'm going to quantify the effect. Now, some of those things are squishy to quantify, like happiness and feeling good and adding good to the world. So I'm quantifying some of it in money. I'm going to create 3,000 millionaires. And by millionaire, I mean they have a 1 million net take home, not top line rev. I'm going to create 3,000 millionaires. I'm one of them, but I'm going to create 2,999 more. Why? Because I want you, and not in just any old way. The way that it's going to happen is by you using your worth, identity, possibility, ownership, sovereignty, the story of your becoming, your own life, your own truth experience, because that's the thing that you and I each own. We own that, and so it's our most powerful tool. I'm going to create 300 deca millionaires, which is 10 million net take home annually. So those are the measurable quantities I'm holding myself to as my way of adding good to the world. Now there's other measurements besides money, and I just got through explaining why money's not the be all end all, but it is the easiest or one of the easiest to use to keep score. Why am I doing it? Well, it forces honesty. For me and for those that I help, because it's easy to talk about 5D universes and, downloads and everything else. And I feel the energetic shift too. But if we can't gather the resources, if we can't accumulate the resources that we need to change the world, we're not going to be able to do it. We're going to be lone wolves screeching on a mountaintop about what we all ought to do. So you and me, we're going to create a bunch of cash so we can have the reach, have the media and medium to reach people, to bless them, to lift them, to serve them, and to help them do these things themselves. Because my message isn't the most important one. Yours is for you. And so my goal is to help you take your passion, your love, your life experience, and turn it into a platform that can help you build whatever reach, following, and change in the world that you want. That's why, for example, as I record this, it'll be a long time before it's released, but next week, which will be in the past when you see this, but next week I'm doing a book challenge. That is the beginning of one of many ways to help people accomplish what I'm saying. Write a book, turn it into a platform, and make $100,000 over and over again as a foundational platform for your message. If you want to know about it, go here, dreambuildwriteit.com, dreambuildwriteit.com. The one I'm doing next week will be over by the time you see this, but there'll be another one later in the year, because helping you capture your story and turn it into a powerful influence and money platform is one of the ways that I'm reaching my goals. But here's the thing. I am not, my goal, my mission, my purpose, and I'm dedicated to it completely. I'm not interested in seeing people looking successful. I want you paid, free, and useful in the world. Now, those are my goals. Reach 300 million, create 3,000 millionaires, 300 decamillionaires. Whoopee, you say. Okay, whoopee. But the reason that is so hard for people to do, doesn't need to be that hard. But the reason it's such a struggle for most is because people are missing the sovereignty ingredient. Now, can you imagine making chocolate chip cookies and forgetting the chocolate chips? They might be great oatmeal cookies, but they wouldn't taste like chocolate. There's a missing ingredient. Now, there was a funny thing. We take care of my wife's mother. She's 95 right now, and almost 95 in a couple of 3 months. And she's blind and can't walk, barely, with a walker, very, very, very slowly and creaky and stuff like that. So we take care of her. And before it got quite so bad, when she was losing her eyesight, but not quite bad, she used to be able to make things like banana bread or chocolate chip cookies, whatever. She would be able to bake some things here and there. And she enjoyed doing it, and we sure enjoyed eating it. So one day, speaking of missing ingredients, she put, I think, sugar instead of flour in a recipe. Well, it didn't work. Right? It's just like a disaster. Couldn't work. Wrong ingredient. So when we miss the sovereignty aspect of creating our lives, we can't create the ultimate life. And here's the reason. We keep blaming everything else. We keep blaming the weather, the government, the war, the president, the prime minister, the rotten people, God, the universe, bad luck, our parents, whatever. We keep blaming everything else, and you're never going to make it with that. Sovereignty means you own it personally, you take full responsibility, and you're not going to let anything talk you out of or move you out of your path, period. Sovereignty means you own your time every minute. If you have, quote, obligations, you're not acting with sovereignty. You can have commitments, but the difference is when I have an obligation, I'm almost always feeling like I have an obligation. I have to, HAFTA, right? I have to do this, that, and the other. And the subtext is I'd really rather be doing something else. I have to do that. You see that in movie clips when guys at work are talking, the wife, we gotta go out. And women do that too, but I've seen more men examples. They have turned what was once a privilege and a blessing into an obligation. So you have no obligations. You have commitments. Commitments are things you choose to do joyously and fully. So you own your time. And every single second you own it. So treat it like you own it. It's your most precious resource. And anything you choose to do it as a commitment, because you're all in. You own your message, right? I am so sad when I see people fill up Facebook, LinkedIn, all the socials, Truth Social, everything, with vituperation, negativity, blaming, anger, frustration, yelling, negative stuff. Is that who you want to be? You want to be known as the angry so-and-so. That's your message. Wow. You own your message. Why wouldn't we, me too, I say this to me, why wouldn't our message be one of construction, building, accumulating community, goodness, and power, instead of name-calling, negative, blaming, that's learned helplessness, right? You own the things you offer to others. Now, if you have a job and you're not working for yourself, then you own the quality of work that you turn in. If you resent your job and you're mad at it and you turn in crappy work, it doesn't hurt anything except you, because you have become a person who's satisfied with crappy work. And the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So you're treating yourself poorly. You're treating your family poorly. You're treating others in your world poorly. You can argue all you want, but it's true. Because we have become someone who excuses that kind of behavior. Okay? You don't have to live in reactivity. Reactivity, you know what that means? It means crap happens and I just react to it. And then I get mad because that's imposed on me. What if you act as a creator? What if you remember that your worth is infinite? Your identity is a divine being with divine DNA. The possibility is infinite. Now, what we do is we get stuck in the idea that it's Harry Potter. We're going to zap it and some bright light's going to shine out of our eyes, or a wand or whatever, and then there's piles of gold, or a relationship's fixed, or a body's all tuned up, or whatever the hell. And we get stuck on that idea that it ought to be that easy. What a sucky way to live. Growth is earned. Growth is earned. We see over and over again. When you give something to people, the appreciation most of the time, now there's some exceptions to this, is short-lived and not very much. So I'm urging you to consider the ingredient, come into agreement with the ingredient, sorry, I'm stumbling, that you own your life. You own your life. And if you've created big prosperity in cash, like you're sitting on a pile of cash, and you're not happy, and you feel like something's missing, and you want to know what this is, get back to sovereignty. Who are you in the world? People act like they're only one thing, like this body is all there is. No, there's two parts. We have an energetic essence. I'll call it a spirit, call it an energy being. I don't really care. I call it a spirit because it's easy. That takes different nutrients. You have to feed that first, because that's where passion, drive, love, creativity all comes from. The skin bag we sit in, this frame, it's a nice vehicle. And when it gets old, it dies, but the spirit doesn't die. The divinity lives there, and your body is a tool if you let it. So I urge you, prosperity without sovereignty is a trap. That's where we started, and we're all the way back around now. So I urge you with all my heart, take ownership of your life. What does that look like? It looks like you deciding what you will create, and then removing all the barriers and doing everything you need to do to create it. That can be cash. That can be a relationship. That can be self-love. That can be forgiveness. That can be joy and happiness. And how do I know all these things? Not because I read about them, not because I went to 100 seminars or had 47 psychedelic experiences. This is hard-won, battle-tested, life-lived experience. I went from C-suite, 30-year career, etc., up to 2007, which is now 19 years ago, coming on 20 pretty quick, and left all that because I was exactly the misery that I'm describing. And I have spent the last 19 years walking the road of worth, identity, possibility, ownership, and sovereignty, and I have created the ultimate life. I live every day in joy and prosperity. And you know what? It's funny. When a person, and maybe you are too, when a person gets there, the first thing they want to do is help other people. They help somebody else avoid the pitfalls, do time compression. So there's another invitation, yourultimatelifepodcast.com. If you have a story to share, get the contact form and talk to me. If you want some help getting to sovereignty, creating purpose, prosperity, and joy, creating a pile of prosperity that comes from sovereignty and joy. You can have it, and I can help you. And the reason I know I can is because I've walked that road with all the broken glass and everything. I love you. My whole mission is that. Every day, all day long, that's all I do. Work on reaching my 300 million, work on creating my 3,000 millionaires and 300 decamillionaires. And I do that by writing books and coaching people and making music and everything else and doing this. So let there be no mistake. You can do this. If you want help, reach out, because that's all that I do every day, all day. I encourage you. I love you. I honor you for your divine heritage. And I know that if you want it, nothing can keep you from creating your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe. Share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.